and so on. So, and then the reggae beat, what happened was a guy called Jackie Jackson. He was also a bass player. He used to be part of the Supersonics. The Supersonics came out of the Scatterlights, because the Scatterlights was Scar's foremost band. As I said to you before, ska was Jamaica's dominant music in the 60s, in the early 60s, around independence. And the music lasted for 4 years, from 62 to 66. And in that time period, the Scatterlights were the dominant house band of many of the studios. They were house band residents at Studio One, where they formed in 1962. They were also the resident band at Treasure Isle Studio, Duke Reid, who was a rival label to, of course, Studio One. But they went by various names because they were under contract at Studio One. They also recorded for guys called like King Edwards, the Giant, who was a great sound system operator. The sound system were very important at that time because they played the latest songs and their sound for the public to know what was popular in the dances. And now you got Top of the Pops, or you got the biggest, you got the official charts. And those times in Jamaica, there was no chart show, so the people had to go to the dances to see, okay, what's the #1 song, what's the #2 song. And then the sound system will play whatever's the top 10 or the top 20, as well as playing other songs to let the public know, oh, this song is popular at this time. And then ever since then, ever since 1968, reggae was the name of the genre. So even in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, everything was called reggae. And even though within reggae you've got various genres. For example, in the early 70s, the reggae sound lasted for 2 years, between 1968 and 1970. And after 1971, there was another sound called the Jonko skank sound, where the organ is a lot more lazier than it was in the 1968 time, in 1969 and 1970 time, where it was a instead of it was a lot more slower, a lot more lazier, and it came in at a more slower pace. You see, that lasted for 2 years, early 70s. So if you listen to the reggae music of the 1960s, of the late 1960s, and if you listen to the reggae music of the early 1970s, there's a slight difference there with the organ lick. The organ licks are not the same. The bass patterns are slightly quicker in the early 60s reggae than it was in the 70s, because of course everything evolves, music evolves, and the Jamaican musicians were evolving and were changing. They're very meticulous and they're very creative. In the mid-1970s now, you had a sound called the Flyers. I give you an example of how the Flyers sound. It's a quirky sound, but that's what they came up with. They copied the Philly sound from America, Government and Office label, the Philly sound. And Al Green's band as well. The great singer Al Green, the great soul singer, he had a band. And his band, some of the sounds they were conjuring up at that time, you're talking between 73 and say 75, 76, was that of the hi-hat sound. In the disco period of the 1970s, a lot of the sounds were like that. If you listen to a disco record, you hear that zzz, zzz, the hi-hat sound of the drum. Zzz, 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 zzz. It was still reggae music, it was still called reggae music, but it was reggae music with a difference. It was not the same reggae you were hearing in 68, 1969, 1970. This is 1975, it's still called reggae, but with a different sound. So the subgenre of that was called the Flyer sound of reggae. Before that was the Jonko skank sound of the early 1970s. And in the late 70s, you had more of a militant stepping sound, where people like Sly Dunbar, Robbie Shakespeare came in with the Revolutionaries at Channel One, which is now a new studio in Jamaica. Took over from Duke Reid and Coxsone, Treasure Island, Studio One sound. The Channel One sound was a new sound. It was more militant, it was more heavier, it was more crack.